Hi everyone, this is Sabrina. Welcome to the S Factor Studio. I'm here with a quick tip technique reminder, and I'm going to attempt to do this on video. This type of crafting, I'm a little bit messy, so I'm going to attempt to try to show you what I'm talking about today. So this is for anyone who is a non-colorer like me. I love to color. I love looking at the beautiful things. You know, when I see people who do color very well, I'm very inspired. But for me, I don't do it well. And I think that I don't do it well because I don't take the time. I don't have the time to to lay down lots of color, to do the shading. I don't have the patience for it, and I just don't have the time for it. So I haven't made the time to try to practice or get better at it. However, this trick, and it's nothing new, really, for those people who do not color, this helps me tremendously. This actually makes me want to try to color more. So what I'm talking about is heat embossing your image. When you heat emboss the image with any, I'm going to show you, I'm going to attempt to show you some examples. What happens is, and the camera is probably not going to pick it up. What happens is that the embossing powder, once you heat set it, it creates a small lip over each of the lined details. And for me, that helps me to lay down color very quickly, because that's always my thing. I'm trying to hurry up so that I can stay in the lines. It helps me stay in the lines, and it keeps me coloring within my image a lot neater. Also, the other reason why I like this is because if you're using alcohol markers, you have to use a specific ink so that when you color with those alcohol markers, it doesn't smear. And what you'll hear most often is the Memento. I do have a small one here, but like in black. People will stamp with the black Memento. One of my favorites is Your Next Stamp. Your Next Stamp has a really good, this ink works well for coloring with alcohol markers as well. But you can't use like other dye inks. So this archival ink, when I stamp with this ink, if I try to color with alcohol markers, it'll smear. So what this does is that I can stamp with any ink, with any type of ink, whether it's a dye ink, a pigment ink, or an ink specifically for coloring with alcohol markers. I can stamp with any ink, and then I'll stamp over it with embossing ink. I use Versamark. I'll stamp over it with the embossing ink, and then I will go ahead and use the embossing powder and heat set it. And I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about now. So this right here, I moved it, so I hope it works. This right here, I've already stamped with Distress ink. And Distress ink is activated with water. So if you stamp with Distress ink and then try to use some type of watercolor, it'll blend and bleed. So I stamped this already with Distress ink. I'm going to go over it with, am I in frame, with the Versamark, which is embossing ink. It's a very sticky type of ink, and I'm sure most of you know these things already. And I'm using, obviously, a stamp tool. This way I know that I'm stamping directly over the same exact spot that I did the original stamp with the Distress ink. And it might have moved a little bit, I'm not sure. Then I'll get my embossing powder. know, I get quiet. I can't talk and craft at the same time. That's another reason why I refrain from doing like tutorials or rather process videos. Put that in there. Now, I was going to just turn the camera off, but I know a lot of people like to see the entire process, so it's going to get loud for a minute because I'm going to turn on my my heat gun. I'm just trying to let it warm up a little bit. And then I don't know if the camera will catch it or not, but and again, I was trying to see if the camera, you can kind of see the glossiness, but I can't tell from where I'm looking if the camera's picking it up. So it's heat embossed, and it did move slightly, but so now there's a lip, there's a small little raised edge around all the details of that stamp, so I can go ahead and I can color. Now, you don't have to do it with a positioning tool. I do this because, first of all, it's easier for me, and it allows me to use whatever ink that I want. But if you don't have a positioning tool, you can use blocks. And what you would do instead, you wouldn't do the technique this way. You would use a pigment ink. So any ink that's not a dye ink, a pigment ink. So VersaFine is a pigment ink, and with a pigment ink they stay wetter longer, so that you can go ahead and heat emboss. Bear with me, my crafty friends. All right. So there, I've stamped with the pigment ink, and then once again I'll go over with the embossing powder. And this is, I'm using clear embossing powder. And I'm going to go ahead and heat set this again. And there again, there, if the light's hitting it, you could kind of see the gloss, you can see the shine. It's created that little raised edge on the image. So now, if you do not have any type of pigment ink and you just have embossing ink, which most of us do, hold on, I'm trying to wipe down the stamp a little bit. You can do this just with regular embossing ink and any colored embossing powder. And I just grabbed any color that I had, so it's probably going to look a little funny. I grabbed copper, but it was just for the sake of the example, so that I can show you. You can use just regular embossing ink and a colored embossing powder. And of course, because this is what happens when I'm on camera, I forgot to mention, we use this what do you call it? I forget what you call this little embossing. I think the name of this is Embossing Buddy, but it pretty much has like cornstarch, and you wipe that over your paper first, just to make sure that when you are putting the embossing powder, it doesn't stick to anything but the image. the sticky, you know, that sticky image with the embossing ink. So again, you stamp. I want to make sure my whole image is captured. And there you might actually be able to see that it looks like a watercolor mark. And then you grab any color embossing powder. Ooh. And here we go again with the heat gun. The copper looks pretty cool, and if you can see the light catching how it's kind of shiny, so you have that little, you have the raised edges. Hey, that copper does look pretty cool. Okay, so you can do it either with if you have a positioning tool, and that's the way I do it, because then I can use any ink I want, any colored ink I want. I don't have a whole bunch of different colors of embossing powder, but if that's what you have, if you have just your stamp and your block and you have some embossing powder, you know, the different colors, you can still do it that way. So again, I'm not a colorer. I am not a colorer, but I'm going to show you, I'm going to try to show you what I mean. So this here, I'm going to do this one because I'm just going to probably do his outer body. So this was stamped with distressed ink. Because I went over it with the embossing powder, I can very quickly and easily use the watercolor. And again, it helps me to, you know, I can quickly color. And if you, in fact, you can see that the embossing powder, the heat set, is resisting the it's resisting the watercolor around the edges. See, so it helps for me. That little lip, it gives me a guideline so that I'm not going out out of the lines. I'm just going to go over it to kind of give you a little bit of an idea. I wanted to show on camera. So this was the one that I did here. I heat embossed and I colored with the with alcohol markers. And this was actually stamped with I think with this ink. So I stamped it with this ink. I went over it with the Versamark, and then I was able to color with the alcohol markers. So again, these were already done. Let me see if I can quickly. There's my phone. Like I said, that lip, it just allows me to quickly just lay down. I love to stamp, and I love the way all these images look when they're colored. If I can just come in and quickly lay down color without worrying about making a mess. These are watercolor markers. I just think it's quick and it comes out pretty. There's one more tip that I have for you that also works. I only use it, again, I have to, at this point, I have to heat emboss in order to color so that I'm not making a mess. But this little tip here, this is a Tombow blender. It's just a clear blender. And I have some Memento ink. And you can dab this blender into the ink. It'll pick up some of the ink, and you have the appearance of watercoloring. And I really, really like this technique because I can kind of control just with, you know, with one pen without having to use the watercolor pen as well as a, what do you call those? A water, I think it's a water pen where you fill it with water and you can spread out the pigment that you've laid down. So this, I like this because it's just using one. And to me, it just comes out looking so, it gives the appearance of you having watercolored your image. And again, I'm not being super careful. I'm just laying the color down all around. I love to do this with colored pencils as well. I didn't bring the colored pencils to my table, so I'm not going to take any extra time. And I just think that it looks so cute. I don't know if you guys can see that. So, and then with the blender you can, you know, most of it comes off, but then you can just wipe it off. So, okay, guess what? It's giveaway time. Yes, I'm doing it again. If you would like to win one of these trays, which you can use this tray not just for embossing, it's a Recollections glitter tray, so you can work in this tray, and this little tip comes out here. I'm going to break what little bit of nails that I have. So at the tip there, this comes out, and then you can pour back anything that you have in the tray. If you would like to win this tray, these distress inks, and a Tombow blender, go ahead and just leave a pleasant comment in the comment section, letting me know if you've done this technique or if you think it might be helpful to you. Like I said, I say it's for non-colorers because I'm a non-colorer, and this, it just really helps me to lay down color quickly, and it still, you know, it still comes out looking pretty good. I almost look like I know what I'm doing, right? Okay, so leave a comment below. You have to be a verified, what is it that I always say? A visible, verified subscriber in order to win. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day. God bless, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.